Alright, so welcome to another week of my camera shaky, one-handed iPad holding, practice problem doing YouTube videos. I'm stubborn, so even though there might be a better way to do this, I tend to just hold the iPad with one hand, show you stuff, and I know that makes the camera jiggle, and so if you're easily prone to nausea, sorry about that, but hey, buck up and get over that, guys. Alright. I'm sure some of you will give me some great solutions on how I could do this better, and I might consider it, but I'm so stubborn. I don't know. We'll see. Now, I gave you some background, some notes there in the slides, so hopefully you're following my suggested order of events, which is to watch the presentation first, take notes on the paper version of the slides that you printed out, and highlight what I highlight. Then watch this video for some practice tips. Then try your own practice problems, check all the answers in your solutions. Your Chapter 3 solutions are in your Chapter 3 folder on myfinancelab.com. And after that, you'll be ready to do the online homework and online quiz for the week. Right, get those for credit, get them done by Sunday night at 11:59, and you'll be well on your way to your preparations for doing well in Exam 1. Now, for the 15th time, I'll remind you that this is the last week where you're only going to get one chapter in coverage. We're going to step up and start doing 2 chapters per week next week when we do chapters 5 and 6. All right. Now, one thing, as you notice, this chapter is a little bit weird in that doing slides, I'm talking out certain things, but it's not the same as doing them because I'm talking about looking up things in tables and I'm talking about hitting calculator buttons, but you couldn't see me actually do that. So here, let me try to demonstrate what I mean. Let's take a look at number 3. Right? So number 3 here says, Luis wants to know how much he will have available to spend on his trip to Belize in 3 years if he deposits $3,000 today at an interest rate of 9%. Now, you saw a reference to timelines and stuff. If you don't have to draw timelines for all problems, especially simple ones, but it's not a bad habit to get into for more complicated problems. And when we're just starting out, drawing a timeline might be a good idea for anything. So he's going to deposit $3,000 today, and it's going to grow at 9% interest until this time, and he wants to know what he'll have at time 3. Now, notice I only put $3,000 here. When we start doing annuities, which we'll do in just a moment, I would put $3,000, $3,000, $3,000 if he was making the same contribution amount every period for multiple periods. That's what an annuity is. But that's not what this is. This is a lump sum case. This is the first of those 4 cases we talked about in the slides where I start with an amount and I want to see what it's going to be worth in a number of periods. Well, that's 3 periods from now in this case. Okay, I have to know an interest rate, and I have to know the number of periods. That's 3. I kind of just keep a log somewhere, make a note of I equals 9%, right? Now, I might also just even say I/Y equals 9%. That tends to be the notation I use even more because of the calculator button. All right, there's different ways to get this. You can either use the financial table or you can use your calculator. I want you to get in the habit of using your financial calculator. It's required for the class. Okay. Now, if you have this kind of calculator, this is a TI BA2 Plus. See, it says BA2 Plus at the top. This is the one I recommended on your syllabus. This will work just fine. It has this gray row of buttons where my left thumb is, N, I, Y, P, V, P, M, T, F, V. Those are what make it a financial calculator. Okay. Now, you heard me talking about when you're using the calculator on my slides, having to clear the time value of money, and I even mentioned once that it was on the right side above the FV button. This thing here, CLR-TVM, that means clear time value of money. So if you got this calculator, every time you do one of these problems, I want you to hit the second key, and then I want you to hit the FV key, because above it says CLR-TVM, and when you hit the second key first and then the FV key, you're clearing the time value of money. That means whatever calculation you do, you're doing fresh here. If you're worried about the decimal points, I usually run around with like 5 decimal places in my financial calculator. If you want to know how I got that, well, down there your decimal point that says format, if you hit the second key and then hit the decimal point, now it says DEC for decimal equals 5. I have 5 decimal places. If I want to change that to say 4, I'll hit the 4 and now I'll hit enter And now I'll hit cancel down here, clear or cancel. Now I only got 4 decimal places. So if you want to change your number of decimal places to 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, you can do it like that. I would suggest using like 4 or 5 in your calculator mostly. And once you set it, you can kind of forget it and leave it like that. All right. Now for this example, remember $3,000, and what is it going to grow to in value in 3 years? Well, the way with the financial calculator to do that is you type in the values first, and then you declare what they are. And you heard me talk about this in my video, or excuse me, in my slides as well. So $3,000 is the present value. That's what he's starting with today. He's going to have that for 3 years, so I hit the 3N, and I hit the 9 IY for interest rate, and that's why I use IY as the abbreviation, right? So I put all 3 pieces of that in there, right? I've hit 3,000, then PV, 3, then N, 9, then IY. Now I hit compute, the compute key up here, FV, 3,885.09. Now it has a negative sign on it. That's because in the calculator, it considers every transaction to be a loan, right? So if you have a positive inflow of money at one period, you're going to have a negative outflow of money in the other period. In this case, when we put in positive 3,000, that means we're going to end up with a negative 3885 at the end. Well, it might have even been more realistic in this case to put a negative sign on the PV up front, because what's Luis doing? He's setting the money aside in a bank account. He's effectively pushing it away from himself into an account. It's an outflow in that case, and at the end he can withdraw this much, this inflow, a positive amount from the account. Hopefully that makes some sense. Now, if I redo this problem, and I'll zoom back a little bit so you can see the buttons a little better maybe and see me do it again. If you redo this with a negative number on PV, you'll see what happens. So I'm going to hit the second key and the FV key to clear my time value of money. And now I'm going to type in 3,000 negative, and I'm going to hit the PV key. So I put the amount in first, then I declare what it is. The order of this doesn't matter. I can do the interest rate next. I can do 9 interest rate and then 3N. Whenever I'm done with all my inputs, however, I hit the compute key, and in this case FV, and now I get the same number, 388509, but it's positive. All right, that's the idea. Now if you're thinking, okay, that's great, I get the idea, awesome. If you're curious, like, well, where the heck did that really come from? Well, another way to do this we talked about was using the financial tables. If you go back to the back of the book, and these used to be all over the place. When people did financial problems, they always used these tables. A calculator is better because you can do rates, you can do things that aren't even on the table. Like here at the top of the table, this is page 624, and you're looking for the future value interest factors. You got to make sure you're using the right table. This is the FVIF. This means you're solving for a future value of a lump sum, not an annuity, right? If I go forward another page, I've got the present value table. That's not correct for this. If I go forward another page, I got the future value for an annuity. That's not correct because this is a lump sum. And then the final table, present value of an annuity. Those are the 4 different calculations we're doing this chapter. All right. So here's what I would look for if I was using the old-fashioned table. I've got my period down this first column. I got the rates across the top. There's my 9% rate. There's my 3 years. There's the factor, 1.295. Well, what that means is if I write down $3,000 times 1.295, this is another way of getting the same answer. I can do it in the calculator. 3,000 times 1.295 equals 3885. Right. Now you'll notice it's very close, and that's the way it should work. It should be very close. Well, I still think the calculator is better because the calculator will give you a more precise answer. It'll include the 9 cents here because you had to round when you created these values in the tables. Also, the calculator gives you the option of using some other rates and information that are not available. Like if I wanted to do 5.5% interest, that's not in the table. Or if I wanted to do 2.5 years, that's not in the table. So the calculator, to my mind, is much better. Right? And you'll be able to use it on the exam, use it for all your homework and quiz, et cetera, et cetera. So going forward, I'm going to just use the calculator when we do these problems. Now the other thing, and I've only done this one time, if you're really curious about the 3885, where it came from, think about what really happened here. This $3,000 that you started with, it earned 9% interest in the first year. Earning 9% interest means to multiply by a 9% increase. That means you multiply by 1.09. The 1 because you keep what you started with, the 3,000, and the 0.09 because 9% interest. Okay? So if I do 3,000 times 1.09, get a lot of glare here, 3270. Okay, that's nice. That means that it's in 1 year it grows to 3270. That's at time 1. Well, we have to grow it again because it's going to grow for another year at 9%. So I'm going to multiply this by 1.09 and I get 35.64 and 30 cents. That's my year 2 amount. And now I'm going to multiply that by 1.09 to get my final answer. So times 1.09. And there I get the same number I got when I used the financial calculator, 38.85 and 9 cents. That's the whole point. That's what you're really doing when you're using a financial calculator, is you're taking those one at a time pieces and you're implementing them all at once by just giving the calculator the basic information. Okay, that's part 1, and I spent a long time talking because it's a lot of stuff to do. If you have the other calculator, actually, you know what I will do? I got another minute left. I'm going to use the other calculator real fast and do the same problem. So this is a graphing calculator. You've seen me use this before. It's a TI-83 Plus. If you have this kind of calculator, then here's how you do the same problem. The apps button here, in some places it's blue, others it's different colors. Hit the apps button, or it might not, if you have a different TI, it'll look similar, but you got to find your apps button. The number 1 is finance, so I hit the number 1 for finance. And now the number 1 up here is TVM solver. It's the time value of money solver. Hit the number 1 again, and you're looking at this input. These are the exact same titles, NI, PV, PMT, and FV, that you saw on the buttons here in this calculator, except they use I% instead of IY, so I guess I lied a little bit. All right. Fill in the pieces and use your arrows to scroll down. So for this one I have N is 3, I is 9, put in 3,000 for present value, leave the PMT at 0, just like we didn't put a payment into the other calculator. Don't do that with this. The hard part when you're doing these is, to first remember, is you can't just hit enter. You have to hit the alpha key and then the enter key. Above the enter key it says solve right there in green. So now that I'm ready to solve for FV, I hit alpha, enter, and there's the 388509 again. It puts a little dot here next to it. The dot is the calculator's way of saying, hey, you solved for me. This wasn't an input, you solved for me. All right, so I'll use the different calculators, show you some more examples here, but that's the basics in the first one. Putting a timeline down, knowing what the pieces are, knowing what the buttons are in the calculator, and the order to push them. I'll go a little bit faster here and let's do a few more.